It's Thursday, although it's a bit of a late one this Thursday. I just had a really, really busy day. I kind of knew it. I was actually thinking about getting this done last night, but there was a developing story I wanted to cover on the podcast. And there was also an Invicta card, which was not super great, but I've kind of like emphasized this that like watching Invicta or anything that's like streaming for free on YouTube is a good idea. It's kind of the classic issue of like, how do we create a more fighter friendly environment? Well, it's by making more profitable promotions. So let's talk about a few non-fight things in relation to the Spivak Lewis card, which is not very good, but there is some fascination to it. And obviously, we got to lead off with the news that Anthony Rumble Johnson, at I believe 38 years old, has passed away. This has created an interesting conundrum because everyone wants to say super nice things about Rumble, even though there's a checkered past with women and domestic violence with Rumble. There's also the honestly just the controversial run of his early UFC days with cutting down to welterweight. But that's not even important. And that has left me in kind of a weird spot because like I do want to say, and I am going to say, my condolences. My heart goes out to his friends and family. But it would be a lie if I said that I was as emotional about this as like Elias Theodoro's passing or some other passings that we have had over the years. So we'll leave it at that. And I do really want to talk about like this punishment that Ilir Latifi got, 3 month suspension for not disclosing his staph infection before his fight with Alexei Oleynik. Now I will say, I'm hoping that this was kind of treated very minorly because of the fact that Latifi is essentially retiring. And there's not really a penalty that probably is something that the commission could actually impose. Because he could just go back to Sweden, probably never pay any kind of fine, and doesn't have to worry about, like, anything because he's retiring. And it'll be more interesting how they handle Derek Minner's situation, because Derek Minner's probably is, I'm not sure if it's actually scheduled, but it's been stated that he'll probably end up in front of the commission in regards to him hiding his knee injury before the fight with Sherlin Nurembeke. And of course, the question is, what do you do with TJ Dillashaw, who we know tried to hide an injury? Well, hide an injury is kind of it's a bit of a weird one because it seems like the number of people that knew TJ was injured heading into that fight with Aljamain Sterling is a lot higher than hiding it would suggest. My thoughts on this is, some people are angry about it because, of course, where do you draw the line? At what point is a injury too much to fight through? And I think the answer is simple. A doctor should be making that decision. And this is kind of the problem, because like people are going to use the Michael Bisping example, that like, because Michael Bisping, of course, had lost vision in his one eye, continued to fight like that, hid it from doctors, etc. Cheated his way through vision tests and everything, and won a title. Like that's the argument that people will make, is he won the title. Or Francis Ngannou winning a title with a blown knee, or in his case, defending a title with a blown knee. Obviously, fighters are not 100%, but there's like what bugs me. What bugs me about TJ and about Latifi and about Minner is different from each one. What bugs me about TJ is it was clearly such a messed up injury that there was no way it wasn't going to pop out. Like the estimation of fighters who have had that injury have all been kind of like the same. Like if you get solid contact in the clinch or a takedown or try to throw a power punch, the chances of dislocating that shoulder are exceptionally high. And the fact that it did it so quickly made it clear. The fact that he had popped it out 20 times by his own recollection suggests that that arm was not going to work. Latifi is a matter of staff. I think that's a public safety risk because that's a risk to your opponent. They're in close proximity to you while you have staff, which is contagious. And you're also putting that on the mats, which means everyone who fights after you is also at a risk of contagion. So that's why, like, Latifi's is probably the worst. Because it's not even a matter of, like, you're not fighting at 100%. Because, to be honest, let's hypothetically say, staph is not contagious. Let's create this world. Let's create this infection that, like, isn't contagious. And you go out there and fight, okay, whatever. You're just fighting sub-optimally. Everyone's fighting a little sub-optimally. I mean, you're fighting, particularly in Latifi's case, you're fighting old man Olenek. I assure you, something is wrong with Olenek every time he fights. And it's not a huge deal, but it's the fact that it's that infection angle that is horrible. And in Minner's case, my problem is particularly that I just think that Minners can't fix the fight. That's my honest opinion. James Krause, not Minner, I want to be clear on this, not Minner, but James Krause is at the center of all the betting controversy. It's known, or at least highly suspected by many, that he bets on fights with his own fighters in it, and it would explain a lot of his corner advice and anger in the corner. And he sent Minner out there with a compromised knee and had him throwing kicks, which isn't really Minner's game. It's not that he never throws kicks, but like if you were to highlight, okay, Derek Minner, what has he got to bring? Okay, he's got extreme aggression early on. He's got a knack for finding submissions. He's got a pretty good takedown game, actually. Like if he didn't have cardio issues, he actually would probably be a fairly good pressure wrestler. And he can scramble. Nowhere in that did I talk about kicks. And you go out there with a compromised leg and throw 2 kicks in a row, and to be clear, injuring the leg on the first one and then throwing it again, like that just feels like fight. That feels honestly, unlike Latifi, who I think number one won the fight, and I think thought he could win even with the staff. And even in the case of TJ, where it seemed to be like trying to come up with a strategy where the shoulder wouldn't cost him the fight, Minner went out there and like was like, I don't like. Did James Krause bet on that a stoppage in the first round? Because that's all I got. I'll save a couple of things for afterwards. If you're interested in just the picks, you can listen to the picks, and then if you're interested in these topics, you can keep listening. Which is the Silvana Gomez Juarez release has been, I don't want to say weird because I saw it coming, but there are some things to talk about there. And there's Alex Pereira's resume, title win, the aftermath, so on. Like, that's interesting. There's news on Walt Harris's daughter, the case of her murder. And there are legal issues for Israel Adesanya and Cain Velsquez that we should talk about. And the future of the featherweight division, women's featherweight, has to be discussed as well. So those I'll save for later, but let's get into the fights. So at the main event, we have heavyweights Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak fighting each other. Now, this just feels like a two true outcome fight. Outcome number one is one that we've seen a number of times. Derek Lewis, probably while losing the fight, connects with a hard one and puts Spivak down and finishes him. Because it is really exhausting to fight Derek Lewis because you're constantly nervous, and any grappling approach which Spivak will probably utilize is exhausting because of how strong he is. And he does have the ultimate nuclear device in his hand. in MMA. He is the new Dan Henderson to a degree where he can nuke anyone. He has the ultimate puncher's chance. And option 2, also Spivak has been chinned before. Option 2, Spivak goes out there, works he's probably actually the better striker of the two, honestly. Not in a way that'll be safe. I want to be clear on that because he's not an outside striker. He's a guy who does his best work throwing combinations in the pocket, which is going to give Lewis openings. But probably can go out there and out volume, outstrike Lewis to a certain degree, and then take him down and probably stop him because this is a 5-round fight. Like, it's hard to see this fight going to decision under either of these pathways. And picking up the win via TKO or a rear naked choke or a front headlock. He has a good front headlock game, so it could be that. And there really isn't a middle ground. And, it feels honestly like just a coin flip because the pathway to beating Lewis tends not to be how Spivak is going to want to do it, although Lewis has looked slower and less prepared, I guess. How old is Lewis now? 37, which is still not old at heavyweight. But his performances have been getting increasingly less impressive. Great win against Chris Daukaus, but that felt like a very easy to do one. The loss to Tai Tuivasa and the loss to Sergey Pavlovich have damaged the idea that maybe Lewis, who was always kind of defensively suspect, always kind of hurtable, particularly to the body, is maybe just going downhill. So I'm going to go with Spivak, but if you want to go with Derek Lewis, ride that train, and I'm going to pull up best fight odds here and get the odds for this fight and other fights coming up. Where is it? There's my UFC Fight Night. It is wait. It is way down here. Okay. It is way down here. We got Lewis at plus 181, minus 211 for Sergey Spivak. That feels a little wide. Like, I feel like this really just should be an even money fight. Like, you have a guy who's been nuked before against the ultimate nuclear weapon in the heavyweight division, who's exhausting to grapple with, who is hard to be safe against while striking. Spivak is not a nuanced, deep striker. I'm surprised. He's coming in at minus 200 plus. Even though I'm picking him. Ion Cutelaba versus Kennedy Nzechukwu, who is 4 inches taller and has 8 inches in reach. My lord, is Kennedy a big dude. Because Cutelaba is not small. Oh boy. This fight, I think, comes down to, like, what fighter that Kennedy shows up as. Because Kennedy looked amazing. He looked amazing against Carl Roberson. He looked like he absolutely had put a lot of things together, utilizing his reach effectively, utilizing the fact that dude is a physical beast, both in terms of the range and in the power, to just absolutely overwhelm Roberson. Like, make it look not even competitive in a fight that, on the betting odds, was actually fairly competitive. Actually, I'm gonna pull up best fight odds as odds for Kennedy fights. What were the odds? What were the closes here? Yeah, he was only a minus 125 favorite against Roberson. Like, for comparison purposes, he was the same. It's the same betting line, essentially, that we had with Kennedy Nzechukwu and Nikolai Negumereanu. Like, that is the insanity of that. He was as high as like a minus 174 favorite at some point. But, like, in a fight that was supposed to be very 50-50, he looked amazing. He looked actually also very good against Danilo Marquez, if I recall correctly here off the top of my head. He has those great performances, but there's also the Nikolai Negumereanu fight where he was just kind of pressured and goaded into a low output kickboxing match with a guy much shorter than him and who does not have good striking technique, as shown by his last fight with Carlos Ulberg. And he also had the loss to Daun Jung. He had the loss, or he had the win against Carlos Ulberg, which actually, in hindsight, looks really, really good. And of course, the loss to Paul Craig. So it's weird. And like Cutelaba, obviously not on a great run right now. Cutelaba has lost 2 in a row to Johnny Walker and to Ryan Spahn, who are both tall, power striking, athletic guys. Maybe who have better ground games than him and subbed him. But before that, there was a pretty dominant performance over Devin Clark, and there was a split draw. There was a split with a split draw with Dustin Jacoby, and he's not that far removed from beating Khalil Roundtree. He's going to come out aggressive because he has no other setting. He's going to throw punches in bunches. He's going to probably try to get this fight down. He's going to try to replicate a way more explosive version of what Nega Mariano used to beat Kennedy. And the question is, what Kennedy is this? Is this Mr. Kennedy or Dr. Kennedy that is going to show up and actually fight here? Because if Kennedy Nzechukwu comes out looking like he did against Nikolai Nega Mariano, that is really promising. Like, against Carl Roberson. But if he comes out looking like he did against Nikolai Nega Mariano, timid, a little, afraid might not be the right word. Cautious, overly cautious. Let's go with that. Overly cautious and timid. Then he probably loses. But I'm going to go with the fact that the run of form of Cutelaba lately has been quite poor. He's been hurt. He's been submitted. He's given up big moments at an ever-increasing rate. And that Kennedy seems to be getting things together. That he seems to be finding his comfort. That he's finding his wheelhouse. And if you don't ask him a ton of questions, and Cutelaba does not. Cutelaba is raw, naked aggression and physicality. It's not a lot of cerebral, nuanced question. Then he should be able to get this win. I'm going to say by decision, because he doesn't really submit people, and Cutelaba still isn't getting knocked out. He's getting hurt, but he's not getting knocked out. Has Kennedy even submitted somebody? Yeah, he has no submissions to his career, and I've never really seen him work submissions. And Spahn, for whatever limitations I think Ryan Spahn has, dude's got a good guillotine. For whatever limitations I think Johnny Walker has, if Johnny Walker gets your back, he's actually pretty dangerous. And Kennedy is dangerous from the back mount, but it's very much in a striking concept, and it does seem like Cutelaba still has a rock for a head. So I'm going to go with the decision. Finish is absolutely possible. And please, Kennedy, please. Because I want Kennedy to do well. Like, Cutelaba, the book is written. Cutelaba is what he is, and I don't think it's ever going to change. He's still young enough to learn and change because he's 28 years old. But there seems to be no attempt from him to learn and change. He's just Hulk smash. And Kennedy has the right physicality and seemingly the right mindset that, like, he's teachable, he's coachable, he's open to changing things, that he could be very, very good. So I'm going to go with him. Chase Sherman, Waldo Cortez Acosta. This fight sucks. I have zero confidence in either guy. Like, we haven't seen Waldo Cortez Acosta lose, but like his win over Jared Vanderraa had everything to do with Vanderraa not making the right fight IQ choices. And that's the same for Chase Sherman. He beat Jared Vanderraa because there were no good decisions being made by Jared Vanderraa, because there never are. They're shallow strikers. There's not a lot to them. Like, it's truly frustrating that these are considered, like, that Chase Sherman is still on some people's radar as a quote unquote heavyweight prospect despite his struggles. And that Waldo Cortez Acosta is a big prospect on the radar, despite the fact that I don't think he has good form for like he throws seriously naked kicks that are terrible. He doesn't defend kicks. He doesn't have a great defense. He doesn't seem all that powerful for all the counts of like, oh, this dude throws a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, which is pretty fast. It doesn't seem to translate to any kind of punching power by heavyweight standards. I'm going with Chase Sherman by decision. I've seen him win fights like this. I've never seen Waldo Cortez Acosta beat anybody who has any semblance of a physically impressive striking game. But I don't know. Oh, betting odds. I didn't give Kudalaba betting odds. Ion Kudalaba versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Nzechukwu the favorite at minus 180, plus 155 back the other way. Chase Sherman is my first dog I'm taking on the card, plus 190 to minus 225 for Waldo Costa Cortez. I don't mind those odds because, I mean, we haven't seen Waldo Cortez Acosta lose, and we have seen Chase Sherman lose a bunch. So I am totally fine with that. Andre Fialho and Muslim Salikov, dead even, minus 110 apiece. This is my banger on the card. These are two guys that are both exciting fighters. They know what they're doing. They're defined by two things that should work together. Salikov is defined by his ability to throw big power, throw counter punches, and defend takedowns. And Fialho is defined by the fact that he will move forward and open up opportunities for those counters. So I think that's a good recipe for a good fight. They're both guys coming off of bad performances. Salikov got pantsed by the Leech. Fialho got pantsed by Jake Matthews. It was more concerning to me that Jake Matthews pantsed Fialho so easily, though, because it confirms some of the inherent problems I think Fialho has, which is Fialho, when he's pressuring, will hesitate. And the hesitation isn't timidity. It isn't, I don't think it's timidity. I don't think it's fear. I think it's overthinking things. And that is something I think Salikov can do to have the big moments in the fight. Like, the way I see this fight going is Fialho may be having more volume because he fights at a higher pace. He's younger, has better cardio, and defining the fights, the combination or the exchanges that are happening. But that Salikov, with his power and his counter game, will define who wins the exchanges by having big moments, by like maybe stumbling Fialho a little bit, hurting him a little bit, showing off the creativity. He'll throw spinny shit. And that's why I'm taking Salikov here by decision. He hasn't finished anyone in a while. That's why I'm not picking a finish, even though we just saw Fialho's chin get cracked. But yeah, I do have a little bit more faith in Salikov where he just is mentally right now. And he's kind of a complete product of what he's going to be, even if Fialho really probably can be way better. But Fialho still has some things to work out. Still has some things that he needs to kind of get comfortable with and make into a body language, muscle response, non-thinking pressure game. He's not there yet. And it's a dead even fight. It should be. Salikov is 38 years old. Like, there's a solid chance that he just falls right off and has like a Tony Ferguson moment. But I don't think it's here. Jack Della Madalena versus Danny Roberts. I hate this fight. I hate this fight because there's nothing here. Like, Danny Roberts is a guy whose main attribute is speed. He's 35 years old. It's fading. His durability has never been very good. Jack Della Madalena is a good striker, fast, good combos. All the questions I have for him are not answered in any way by what Danny Roberts brings to the table. And Jack Della Madalena is going to probably win this fight by TKO. It's probably not going to be a bad fight. Like, it's not going to be boring. It's just that, like, for all the things I want to see Della Madalena tested and figured out or moving up the platform, like, it kind of just does none of it. Like, Roberts is coming off a loss to Francisco Trinaldo, and Della Madalena is coming off of, like, 3 straight wins if we include his win on Contenders Series. Like, just on that regard, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. And before that, like, sure, Roberts won 2 in a row, but one of those is back in 2019 against Zalim Mamadiev, who did not turn out to be very good. And I don't know. It feels like odd matchmaking. Was this supposed to be someone else? Doesn't look like it. There's no canceled fight for either guy. I don't know. Della Madalena by TKO. Enjoy it. Have fun. I assume he's a big favorite. He is minus 550. He is the biggest favorite on the card. Plus 400 on Danny Roberts. Biggest underdog on the card. Makes sense. Yeah. Zhalgas Zhumagulov versus Charles Johnson. I'm really not sure what to make of this one because I'm not really sure what I think of Charles Johnson yet. Like, I know what Zhumagulov is. He's a guy who has powerful strikes, has kind of realized that he doesn't have enough depth, though, in his striking game or enough speed to actually make his way through here with just striking. So he's worked in some clinching and some wrestling and some areas where he can apply his power and his strength. And, I mean, Mokaev did that to Johnson, and Johnson had no offense when that was happening. But, you know, he did more or less shut it down. So, I'm going with Johnson by a decision. Seems like he is the more comfortable striker in MMA. He's taller and longer, 5 inches taller, 4 inches longer. And if any of his like regional success is to be believed, he's a hard hitter with fast hands and some decent creativity. And Zhumagulov hasn't really shown the ability to really outstrike anybody. So, and I just don't think, I think the clinch and the takedown game from Zhumagulov is just going to be boring. Like, Zhumagulov's only UFC win still to date is Jerome Rivera. And it's kind of weird because, like, dude had a lot of hype on him. Like, dude had beaten Ali Bagatinov, who's a really good Russian fighter. He had beaten Tadger Ulanbekov, who's having a good UFC run. He had beaten Tyson Nam, who is having a good UFC run. But I don't know. He's looked not good against Amir Albazi and Halian Paiva and Manel Kapp. And he had a competitive fight with Jeff Molina, but like all of his limitations were kind of still laid bare. And like really what kind of kept him in that fight is the fact that Molina lacks like power and strength. And Johnson has those two. So Johnson, I'm kind of interested what the odds on this one are. Minus 160 for Charles Johnson, and Zhumagulov is the dog at plus 140. Makes sense. Marina Moroz versus Jennifer Maia. This fight should be higher on the card. Maia's a former title contender. Moroz is kind of working her way into title contention. I'm not like interested in seeing her as a title contender, but I'm just saying. And, you know, it should be above Johnson and Zhumagulov, who have combined 1 UFC win. Should be above Chase Sherman and Waldo Cortez Acosta. It should be above, probably honestly, it should be above Jack Della Madalena and Danny Roberts, although Jack Della Madalena is a way more important fighter, I think, to the future of the company than either of these ladies. Just because he's an exciting prospect. But, again, I don't like the Roberts fight. Anyways, let's break it down. So Marina Moroz, 3 inches taller, 3 inches longer. I have a false conception of Marina Moroz, and I know it's a false conception. I don't know what fight did it. I honestly don't know, but somewhere in her career, it got stuck in my brain that she is weak in the clinch. Not technically, not a lack of effort, not a lot of technique, but like just a lack of power and strength. And it immediately made me think that like Maia could win this fight. And then I'm watching her fights and I'm just going, she's out clinching Agapova. She's out clinching Angela Hill to a certain degree. She's out clinching. Who is the other fighter? I don't have her. Myra Buena Silva. There you go. Myra Buena Silva. And like implementing a top control game on fighters like that who are physical beasts. In the case of Agapova and Buena Silva, she couldn't do it against Angela Hill. Angela Hill just stayed away from her and kind of outranged her, which is a bit sad because like Moroz, like that's the weird thing is they also emphasize Moroz's boxing background. And I think her boxing is actually really not that good. Like it's good in the sense that she will bring volume, tons of volume, but none of it is all that good. So I'm still a little bit worried that Maia, who is super tough, is a sinkhole in the clinch, kind of a Neil Magny clinch player almost. Like there's nothing flashy about it. There's nothing about the first time you clinch with Jennifer Maia that convinces you can't do it. But it just becomes harder and harder and harder. But Maia has not looked great lately. Kind of ironic. She had her shining moment in her loss to Valentina Shevchenko, where she kind of woke the world up to like that Shevchenko is technically in some ways a flawed fighter. Like a lot of what Valentina Shevchenko does is just whatever she wants because people can't answer physically. And then she beat Jessica Ai. We know what I think about Jessica Ai. And then lost to Chookagian and Manon Fiorot. Now, Manon Fiorot, way more physical than Moroz. Chookagian, way more experienced, way more nuanced than Moroz, and also taller. But I like Moroz's chances here. I talked about how she's not a great range striker. I talked about how there's not a lot of power to it. It's not the cleanest technique. But something that Maia often has happened to her is that she allows people to pile up volume on her. That she, at range, will just kind of be a little bit of a blank canvas for you to hit. And Moroz will hit that a lot. And like I said, despite part of my brain still screaming at me that like if she clinches with Maia, it's going to be a terrible idea, Moroz does have a good clinch game. She does have a good top game. She is opportunistic on the ground. She is good at forcing position changes on the ground. She is good at finding dominant positions on the ground. I'm taking Moroz by decision because basically no one finishes Maia. What? She's got 9 losses. What are they by? 9 losses. Decision Fiorot, decision Chookagian, decision Shevchenko, decision Chookagian, decision Carmouche, decision Deanna Bennett, decision Leslie Smith. And then she has a regional loss to Vanessa Porto, which has no method here. And she was stopped by Sheila Graf in 2012. Sheila Graf is a legitimately hard hitter. I don't have a ton of nice things to say about her as a fighter in totality, but she is a hard hitter. And yeah, it's kind of it, really. There's a lot of like a mix of the Leslie Smith and the Deanna Bennett and the Caitlin Chookagian and Liz Carmouche. Like they're all kind of mixed into Moroz's game. Like parts of what made them successful against Maia are present. So I am gonna go with it. Came in thinking that this would be like somewhat of a close fight. But the more I watch, the more I think about it, the more comfortable I am that Maia is probably going to take another loss here. Minus 192 for Moroz, plus 167 for Maia. Let's move on to Kevin Natividad and Ricky Turcios and talk about another fight where hang on. That's not the next fight. That's the next fight listed on the odds page, but Tapology has Miles Johns versus Vince Morales. You know what? Let's talk about Miles Johns, Vince Morales, because I'm somewhat interested in this fight. Same height, same reach. The core difference here is that I don't trust either of these guys for opposite reasons. For Morales, I just don't trust that he has the physicality. Like, he's a wrestler that I didn't even understand that, like, wrestling was his thing, except they keep saying it. They keep banging on about it. It's listed everywhere. His wrestling doesn't seem good. He is decent volume, though. Has a pretty thought through striking game. Like, there's some nice counters. There's some good volume. There's some smart ideas. But he's just not really an athlete. And that's a big deal at bantamweight, as we know, and it's probably why he's 11-6 in his career, because if you look at the fighters he's lost to, Benito Lopez, not anyone's idea of a great technician, just physicality. Lost to Domingo Pilarte, lost to Yidong Song. Okay, that I can't fault. Got stopped by Chris Gutierrez because he couldn't respond to the leg kicks. Lost to Jonathan Martinez because he couldn't cut the cage off. And then, does have a knockout of Louis Smolka, which I guess is the hope. And then, like, everyone else he's fought has, like, their own physical limitations and their own stylistic limitations. Draco Rodriguez, Ayman Zahabi, Justin Hugo. Like, Hugo and Zahabi, both like low-end athletes. Rodriguez, okay athlete, but really beyond, like, just jabbing, doesn't really seem to have, like, really much to his game. And that jab did give him trouble. Like, I want to make that clear. That jab gave Morales a ton of trouble. That brings us to Miles Johns, who has the opposite problems in the sense that I think as a technician, he's incredibly limited. He has a power smash jab, which talk about Rodriguez's jab. We have the power smash jab here. He throws basic combinations, doesn't vary it up a lot, very static in defense, very hittable, and throws a powerful double leg. Or doesn't throw, shoots with a powerful double leg. And has all the physical attributes that you need to see. The thing is that Morales does represent, like, possibly a UFC caliber fighter, which is something Miles Johns has not beaten. Because when he fought Kevin Natividad, Anderson Dos Santos, and Cole Smith, it was very obvious that all three of them don't really belong in the UFC. We're going to talk about Kevin Natividad later because he's fighting Ricky Tercios right before this. And then he was obviously humiliated by Mario Bautista and John Castaneda. But the thing is, like, Bautista is way above Morales as a physical guy and as a technician. And Castaneda is closer, but I never get the feeling that Castaneda is as lacking as an athlete and is also obviously a very good tactician himself and technician. So I'm going with Miles Johns by decision. He's a little bit too predictable, a little bit too one note for me to pick him to finish Morales. But I just think that, like, anytime Morales gets things going, he's going to have to expose himself to the power and to the takedowns. And it's not like Miles Johns has been, like, a popular guillotine victim or anything like that. His two losses are via the arm triangle to Castaneda and a flying knee to Mario Bautista. And Castaneda had to work him and gas him out. And I guess Morales could do something similar to that because Johns does gas out. Johns is massive for the weight class. That's way too much weight. Probably should consider 145. But yeah, Johns by decision. I still don't know why he was cut from the UFC. Like, they brought him back after cutting him. Didn't even take a fight on the regional scene. I don't know what happened there. And Johns is the favorite, minus 170 to plus 145. For Morales, that feels about right. Just too much physicality. Then we have Ricky Tercios versus Kevin Natividad. If Tercios was still kind of like just the kind of volume, awkward, crazy man that he was when he came into the UFC, I'd probably take him here. But that fight with Ayman Zahabi, man. Oh boy. Um, I think that Ricky Turcios is trying to turn into something. That Ricky Turcios is trying to become a better fighter with more capital T technicality, more of a counter game, more of a slick game, which out of Team Alpha Male makes no real sense. Um, what I'm saying is that I applaud a guy for trying to become a better fighter because the fighter that Turcios was before was lucky to be in the UFC. We're talking about Brady Heiston later as well, but they were kind of a matchup in the Ultimate Fighter finale that behooved the idea that like the Ultimate Fighter favors people who don't need a lot of preparation and just kind of present a awkward, confusing thing to their opponent. And that's how they got through there without having any success before the show that indicated they were UFC caliber, and have had no success since the show that suggests they are UFC caliber. I'm going to go with Natividad via decision. It really has nothing to do with him because I have no faith in him. Like he's just a regional, well-rounded talent with okay athleticism who fell way short against Miles Johns and Danan Batgarel. And I don't think I'll pick him after this, but I am gonna pick him here. Also, just a side note, why is Daniel Argueta still fighting at 145? Like when he fought David Jackson. Damon Jackson. I'm bringing this up because Turcios beat Argueta on the Ultimate Fighter, and I just was looking at him and realized that like after losing to Damon Jackson, almost exclusively for being too freaking small, he's taken a 145 fight against Isaiah or Isaac Dulgarian, pardon me, which is an awesome name and really should have a Game of Thrones nickname on him, but he's just called the Midwest Choppa. And he's undefeated. He's an undefeated guy who hasn't really fought anybody, but and actually is about the same size. They're probably both really bantamweights. I wonder if it's just like kind of a late booking, maybe. I don't know. But that was a bit weird. Betting odds have Turcios as the favorite. I guess he won the Ultimate Fighter. I guess he has a more recent win. Plus 135 for Natividad. Minus 155 for Turcios. If you're looking to bet, that's a dog that you may want to take. Because almost anyone has a dog against Ricky Turcios might not be a bad bet. Then we have Maria Oliveira versus Vanessa Demopoulos. Oliveira is huge. 7 inches in reach, 4 inches in height. What are the exact numbers here? Now part of this hugeness is Demopoulos being relatively short, relatively compact. So there is that to the whole thing where like she's 5'2" and has a 62-inch reach, but 5'6", 69-inch reach at strawweight. That is big. I don't have a lot of faith in Oliveira. She doesn't really work a great range game. She kind of got clinched a little bit at will by Tabitha Ricci. And that could be something Demopoulos does as well. Demopoulos is a good grappler. Like the UFC doesn't emphasize her grappling accomplishments, but like LFA did it. LFA was banging the drum. If you ever watch her fights from LFA about her grappling, and I agree. I think she's a very good grappler. She's not a very good striker though. Doesn't really throw a lot of volume. She's very counterable. Oliveira does have a good counter game. Demopoulos kind of really still is just a win over Silvana Gomez Juarez, because that win over Jinyu Fry doesn't mean much. Mind you, to be clear, Maria Oliveira's lone UFC win against Gloria DePaula, I thought DePaula won. So, there is that. Oliveira does have some good hips. She does have some takedown defense. Demopoulos does not have a particularly great takedown game herself. Like, again, her tap-out win over Silvana Gomez Juarez was largely when she just got nuked and ended up on the ground, and they followed her to the ground. And then her other impressive victory in that regard is Sam Hughes, who again was the one to take her down, and she just out-scrambled her, got the submission. I guess what I'm saying is I'm going with Oliveira for a combination of like kind of hope that she has some reasonably fast hands. She is huge. She is strong. She is physical. I've yet to really be sold on Demopoulos being able to impose her game on anybody. But this is also probably the first time that this is probably the easiest fight in the UFC she's had where she could probably do it. Still, I'm going to go with Oliveira by decision. They are dead even, minus 110. Depending on what betting site you go to, you can find them both at favored odds, I think. Is Demopoulos the favorite anywhere? I take that back. Demopoulos is not the favorite anywhere. Her lowest odds is minus 105 to minus 115 for Oliveira. Pardon me. Her best odds are minus 110. Would have been down. Her best odds are the minus 110 that is being used as a reference here, but she can be found at plus 100. If you can get her at underdog odds, that might not be a bad bet. Again, I don't recommend betting on MMA for most people because only bet what you can absolutely freaking lose, because MMA is too unpredictable to really guarantee stuff. And it really puzzles me why people think that anyone can guarantee returns that's involved in the industry and not be fixing fights, but okay. But yeah, Oliveira by decision. Fernie Garcia versus Brady Heastan. Okay, this is like one of the weirdest things. Brady Heastan has no professional victories over anybody who before the fight had won a fight. His 5 wins have a combined 0-24 record. Now, he did beat people on The Ultimate Fighter who have wins. Vince Murdoch and Josh Reddinghouse. Actually, 2 pretty solid wins on The Ultimate Fighter. But I need to see him win someone who's actually planned for him before I can pick it. I'm not a big believer in Garcia either. Garcia has an incredibly padded record himself. His wins have a combined 45, 61, and 1 record. 4 of them, only 4 of them, have winning records. Like, this is a can crusher meet can crusher. Who's the better can crusher moment? Garcia at least does have the win on Dana White Contender Series against Josh Weems, who, well, exceptionally raw and exceptionally poorly structured, is fairly athletic. Heastan is kind of just a pressure wrestler from Sick Jitsu, who is a camp that has developed a good reputation, despite, in my opinion, and the opinion of others, but in my opinion, and I'll only speak for myself, has terrible coaching. Everyone from Sick Jitsu that has succeeded, Michael Chiesa, Sam Sicilia, Juliana Pena, have done so because of some inherent physical gift that they have that no one else in their gym has. In any way. In fact, the only real like complementary pieces of Pena's game that developed is when she started working with Valley Flow. Stop going to Sigjitsu. Anyways, Garcia by decision because Heastan does seem at least fairly tough and defensively responsible enough. So there you go. And then a fight that I'm really interested in, I think is in a very, very wrong spot on this card. Natalia Silva versus Teresa Bleda. Bleda is scary tall. She's 5'9", 5 inches taller, 6 inches longer than her opponent. Silva looked amazing in her UFC debut against Jasmine Jasudavicius. That was fantastic. It was amazing. She looked so good. The takedown defense was sharp. The combinations were sharp. The footwork was sharp. She was slick on defense. I am excited. I don't really know why they're giving her a debut. Don't get me wrong, Blade is a very interesting prospect in her own right. She's big. She's strong. Seems to have a good takedown game, both from the clinch and from the shot. Seems like a very suffocating top player. Has some submissions, although the quality is not great. The quality of her opposition is not amazing. And I think she is going to be at some point in for a rude awakening. I think it's this fight because let us say for a moment that Bleda is better than Jasudavicius. And I'm not even sure that that's the case. Jasudavicius was a tall, strong girl, and she could do nothing with Natalia Silva. Nothing. She got pieced up. And it looked like Silva, after 2 years on the shelf, really made some massive improvements and looked very, very good. There is, I guess, that question. Okay, it's happened once. And we don't really know how good Jasudavicius is. She was kind of riding a little bit of hype from beating Kay Hansen. And we know Kay Hansen has all kinds of problems. But it looked really good. And I haven't seen Bleda with the answers to that. Her wins have all kind of just been, I am way more physical than you. And she might be more physical than Silva because she's huge. But Silva is very physical in her own right and does not rely on it. She is a seemingly very smart, very well put together fighter. Silva by decision because she doesn't have a lot of finishes and she didn't finish Jasudavicius despite lighting her up. I imagine Bleda is tough enough to eat that kind of abuse. So, by decision. Don't know why this fight is where it is. This fight is easily more important and more exciting worthy than Garcia Houston, than Tercios Natividad, than probably even than Miles Johns and Vince Morales. Like, you cut Miles Johns. So, like, how much faith do you really have in him? More than Zuma Gulov versus Charles Johnson. Like, there is and more than Sherman and Costa. I know. We got to put a heavyweight card near the top of the card. Fuck that. There you go. That's the card. Let's get talking about some of the news coming up. There's a Bellator card tomorrow, by the way. Actually, not bad. Check it out. I'm interested to see what Vadim Nemkov has for Corey Anderson in a rematch. I'm interested in what Sullivan Cully can do. I am interested in what. Hang on, let me just pull up the card. Patricio Pitbull versus Usman Nurmagomedov. That's interesting. Daniel Weichel versus Timur Khizriev. That's interesting. I still am pretty high on Terrell Fortune as a prospect. That could be good. You've also got Roman Forlando, Otto Rodriguez. Like, there's a bunch of fairly promising guys on this card. It is definitely worth your time to check out, I think, or it should. It is on paper. We'll see whether it is. And then one's got some good stuff coming up on Prime, where you get Christian Lee versus Karyam Abbasov, and you get a couple of good kickboxing matches. Kevin Billingen versus Jae-Woon Kim. And yeah, it's not amazing MMA, but it's good. And ironically, the 163 card I think is better. But that could also just be I'm really in the bag for Izuki Hirata. And So Hyun. I'm looking forward to that fight. Give those ladies a chance. And Kirill Gorabets also very in the bag. Let's talk about the news here that I wanted to get through. I mentioned at the beginning, Silvana Gomez Juarez got cut. And this is, I guess what I'm saying is, like, this is just the horrifying nature of MMA fandom, because she didn't get cut. She probably just didn't get renewed because she went 1-3 in the initial UFC contract that they're signing these days, either off a Contender Series or not. outside of The Ultimate Fighter, is 4 fights. She's gotten to the end of her contract. She went 1-3. She's 37 years old. Yes, I get it. She has boobs. Guys, the internet is out there. There are free pictures that you can take there. I've never understood I am a fan of insert fighter because of sex appeal. I don't get it. Now, I was kind of a fan of the fact that she did have fight-changing power, which is pretty rare at strawweight. But she doesn't apply it nearly enough. And like I said, 37 years old, not sure that's ever going to get any better. So we got that. We talked about the fighter injuries. Alex Pereira's resume. Here's the thing. A lot of people are listing like Alex Pereira as the worst champion ever. And if you want to say he's the worst middleweight champion in modern UFC history, I actually think you could agree with that. I could agree with that because he doesn't have the resume yet. By the time he's done, it might not be the case. But right now, yes. Guys, Dave Mene was a UFC middleweight champion. Dave Mene's big wins leading up to the title were Carlos Newton, who does not fight at 185, and Shoney Carter does not fight at 185, generally. Actually, I think he even had just a draw with Shoney Carter. And Dennis Hallman. I know we hate Sean Strickland, and we should, but that is a better win than anything Mene had. And also, keep in mind, something to really think about here. Mene, almost in all of his fights, had way more experience than his opponents. Like, people want to use, like, the Chris Lytle win he has as, like, a credible win. Chris Lytle was in his 7th fight. Mene was in, like, his 27th fight. And Lytle had yet to learn to grapple or really wrestle at all. So, drop it. Take the rose-colored glasses off and drop it of yesteryear. The worst champions in UFC history at the older weight classes, like the original, like 5 or so, lightweight to heavyweight, have already happened. Izzy Adesanya got arrested for having brass knucks. I don't have much to say about that. Mostly because I don't have a lot of facts on the matter. He'll probably face some kind of thing. I don't imagine it'll be a big thing. And Cain Velsquez was denied bail. And I've talked about the Cain Velsquez thing. He deserves punishment for what he did. The guy he was trying to kill is, if guilty, and it does seem like the abundance of evidence is there, is a piece of crap. But he endangered a bunch of other people. You have become a piece of crap in your pressure for revenge. And then the sad stuff here, Walt Harris's daughter, well, it's sad, but it's also, and maybe Walt Harris's daughter was killed, or stepdaughter. I can't remember which. The killer, the accused killer, has been charged with 3 counts of capital murder, which is murder during a kidnapping, murder during a robbery, and murder in a vehicular crime. And he faces the death penalty. This guy is, it's one of those weird ones because it's triggered a bunch of talk about whether he should have even been out, because he was under bail for an assault and robbery of a 77-year-old man in a hotel or motel, I'm not sure which. And he also has an attempted murder charge back in 2012 where he rammed a police car. He was not indicted on that occasion, but mostly because I think the crime didn't fit the charge, as opposed to he didn't do it. Yeah, this is hopefully this is cathartic to Walt Harris and the family. And honestly, this tragedy is something that, thoughts, prayers, if that's your thing, condolences to the Harris family. It's dark. And we'll finish off with saying that women's featherweight appears to be dead. The UFC has asked Norma Dumont to cut to 135. They have asked Macy Chiasson to cut to 135. They had previously asked Ramona Pasquale, Chelsea Chandler, and Aspen Ladd to do the same. When Ladd refused, they released her. So I think we can safely say that the end of 145 is coming. They may keep that belt around just for like publicity, but they were never serious about the division. And it's kind of a shame because they actually signed a bunch of people who are way more interesting when they don't have to cut a bunch of weight. Like Macy Chiasson, more interesting at 145. Chelsea Chandler, more interesting at 145. I'm not sure about Norma Dumont. A lot of people are heartbroken about Norma Dumont having to cut weight because they love that booty. See my comments about Silvana Gomez Juarez. This is a weird fandom, and I'm confused a lot of the time by it. Leave it here. Either above to the left, to the right, to the bottom. You will find a Linktree link as well as some other links. You can check out the Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Acast, Spotify, Anchor. There's a gaming channel on YouTube as well. There's a Discord where we do simulated mixed martial arts as well as slam ball, which is a really awesome sport, and pro wrestling. You should check it out. And yeah, I'm going to finish it off there. Have a good day. Enjoy the fights. Check out Bellator if you can. I'm not a big Bellator booster. The quality of their cards is highly variable, but it's free MMA. If you're not doing something else, check it out.